In this video, we're going to learn about what is this Wagner group, who are these people, and why have they rebelled against Russian President Vladimir Putin. We're going to find the answer to all these questions, and I will try my best to explain everything in very simple language. Alright then, let's begin. So the first question is what this Wagner group is and who are these people. You all must have heard about a term called mercenary, especially from the 2008 movie Rambo. John Rambo was a former US soldier who became a mercenary for rescuing captives in Southeast Asia. So mercenaries are a group of people who are mostly ex-soldiers, and then there are ex-prisoners as well. They are hired to fight on behalf of any state or nation without having any personal political interests or issues because they are paid huge amounts of money to do their job. Or you can also think of them as armed civilians who are paid to do military operations in a foreign conflict zone. Mercenaries do not care about patriotism, medals, honors, etc. They only do a job for private gains. And the most important reason behind hiring them is that if they are captured while carrying out the tasks, those who have hired them can disown their presence and avoid taking any responsibility. The main reason behind powerful nations employing mercenary groups is to make them do tasks that they are reluctant to assign to their own military forces. So Wagner Group is a private Russian paramilitary unit of mercenaries fighting in Ukraine and in few other parts of the world, basically Middle East and Africa, including Syria, Yemen, Libya, Sudan, Mozambique, Madagascar, Central African Republic and Mali. They are government funded, and the primary reason behind deploying them is to safeguard Russian political interests in a given region. Let me also tell you that even the United States has its own mercenary groups. But they don't use the word mercenary, they have a different term for it. America indulges in a lot of euphemisms. So the United States does not use mercenaries, they hire private military contractors. Because if you read the Geneva Convention, it clearly defines what a mercenary is and countries should not hire them. So to bypass this convention, the United States uses the term private military contractors to give additional support to their armed forces. Now, one may say that there is a difference between a mercenary group and a private military contractor. Of course, that is true. That is why the terms are different. But then you have to understand that most mercenaries, if not all, have gained combat experience in a regular army before they decided to become free enterprise soldiers. Almost all mercenaries have a special forces background or have served in other elite combat units. So they know their stuff. When these people know everything about when, how and what to do, then what difference does it make if you change the terminology from above? It feels good to show the world because the world still trusts face value to a great extent. But whatever needs to be done internally will be done by the government in any way possible. That's why I said Wagner Group is a private Russian paramilitary unit. I did not blatantly use the words mercenary group. They have a proper corporate building. So if you see, even Russia is smart, just like the United States. Play the word game. Now, who owns this Russian private military or mercenary Wagner group? There is a person by the name Yevgeny Pirgozhin. He is the owner of the Wagner group. Currently, he is 62 years old. He is also a businessman. He owns several restaurants and catering companies to provide food services to Kremlin. And not just Kremlin, his company also has a catering contract with the Russian armed forces. That is why sometimes he is also called Vladimir Putin's chef. Here's the picture where you can see he's providing food to President Putin during the visit of the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi to Russia in 2015. Now here is another picture from 2006 where he's offering a drink to the US President George Bush. So from these pictures we can come to the conclusion that this individual used to hold a special position within Russian President Vladimir Putin's inner circle. If you are aware of Putin, he is a very shrewd president who was previously a KGB spy. So you can assume that the people around him are the ones on whom he personally places 100% trust. And here we are talking about a person who prepared food for Putin. So he must definitely be someone special to Putin. It is not like Putin would casually eat anything made by anyone. Now this video is not going to be a biography of this person. Let me briefly explain how this person Pirgozhin went from owning a catering company to owning a private military company. What you need to understand is that he's running his restaurant and catering business since the 90s. Gradually, Pirgozhin made progress. His business continued to expand, even within the government sector, which includes schools, companies, and armed forces. As you may be aware, Vladimir Putin has been either the Prime Minister or the President since 1999. With time, Prigozhin's connections grew within the government sector, particularly among bureaucrats and high-ranking military generals. Through them, he further came into the close circle of President Putin. As you can see from this picture, where he is seen hosting former US President George Bush and Prince Charles. It is believed that Prigozhin was inspired to start a private military company in 2014. As you may recall, in March 2014, Russia took control of Crimea, which was part of Ukraine before 2014. If you are interested in understanding the political reasoning and background behind this event, I have a video that can provide you with all the answers. As I was saying, after Russia's capture of Crimea, Prigozhin got an idea. Why not take advantage of this opportunity? And let me also tell you what Prigozhin saw in Crimea that made him see as an opportunity. To understand this, you need to know that when Russia took control of Crimea, it was not seen as acceptable by the United Nations and other opposing countries, especially Western countries, and more specifically the United States. They began to view Russia as an invader. If you look up on the internet, the control that Russia gained over Crimea in 2014 is referred to as an invasion. After 2014, along with Crimea, Russia gradually started military operations in the eastern part of Ukraine. With this, Russia started facing a major problem. Russia did not want to deploy its regular military troops in these areas. Now think about it. What if even a single Russian soldier was captured operating illegally on foreign soil? The United States would get a reason to make it into a major international issue. The same strategy is followed by the United States as well. They do not want a single US soldier to be captured in such cases, because if Russia captured even one US soldier, even they will use it and make it into an international issue. So the Russian government needed a force that could work for the government just like a regular army does. This way, Russia could establish deniability and claim that their regular army was not involved in any activities. So if you see, essentially Russia needed a private military after 2014 Crimea's takeover. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Prigozhin established his own private military company. It is also said that Prigozhin personally presented this idea to Putin, and Putin approved it. The Russian government even provided Prigozhin with land in southern Russia, where he could set up his company and training base for fighters. And then in September 2015, as you know, the Russian government decided to intervene militarily in Syria and gave direct support to the regime of Bashar al-Assad. Even Syria became an opportunity for Prigozhin, where he got contracts for food and supplies. Along with that, he also dispatched his Wagner fighters. Now this is the symbol, basically an arm patch of the private military contractor, the Wagner Group. In 2017, they entered Sudan. In 2018, the organization arrived in the Central African Republic. In 2019, the Mozambique government invited the Wagner Group after the escalation of an insurgence in the northern region of the country. The Wagner fighters have been deployed in Libya since 2019 in support of the warlord Khalifa Haftar. In 2021, this group entered Mali after a pro-Russian government and anti-Western government came into power after a military coup. So you see how the Wagner Group started expanding wherever the Russian government's political interests had to be safeguarded. And if you pay attention, wherever these Wagner fighters are deployed across the Middle East and Africa, the main objective is to protect the ruling or emerging governing elites who are pro-Russia. And they are also given the responsibility of protecting critical infrastructures. When I say critical infrastructures, I mean oil fields, diamond and gold mines. The Wagner Group used to receive exclusive rights and licenses to mine gold and diamond. From 5,000 fighters, this organization expanded to 50,000 fighters. As time went by, his business expanded both financially and militarily and started getting more and more influential. He not only achieved success, he also made many enemies like former business partners who feel cheated, then army generals whom he criticized along the way. And then he also triggered top officials in the government who feared that one day his ambitions might get him political powers. Although he may have made many enemies and triggered many powerful people, the fact remains that President Putin was not upset with him until this year, June 2023. On Saturday 24 June 2023, Chief of Wagner Group, Yevgeny Pirgozhin, ordered his troops to march towards Moscow to seek revenge from President Putin and his military leaders. Now the immediate question that would come to anyone's mind is, what happened? Wagner chief Prigozhin, who couldn't have rose to the top without the support of Russian President Putin, then why is he going against him? Because the fact of the matter is any mercenary group or any private military company relies on logistics and intelligence support from the Ministry of Defense to continue its fighting. So this means Prigozhin relies on Putin's continued favor in order to operate. So what made him turn his back on Putin? Why did he betray him? So let me tell you why he did that. You need to understand one thing, that whenever a person keeps progressing rapidly in life, their desires and ambitions also keep increasing. And sometimes such desires can go beyond extreme limits. So this is exactly what happened with Prigozhin. During his early years, Prigozhin spent a significant amount of time, specifically 9 years, in prison. Furthermore, his private military company comprised not only former military personnel, but also a substantial number of individuals who were convicted of heinous crimes, including thousands of prisoners. He saw an opportunity in this as well. He even started raising public funds for these prisoners who were fighting along with the Russian armed forces. It is said that he managed to raise a lot of money and created a positive public sentiment about these prisoners. He even used to publicly criticize many anti-war Russian elites, including some of Putin's close friends. He even started giving extreme suggestions, such as replacing the Russian Defense Minister, Sergei Shoigu, and Chief of General Staff, Valery Gerasimov. And then he even started recommending some options as to who should be in charge of what. This is where people from the FSB and other high-level government officials started getting angry about him, and they saw him as a threat to the constitutional order. Since he has a big private military group that is not controlled by the state, it slowly started becoming obvious that after the war, they will demand their rewards, including political rewards. So within the Russian government, people started having this feeling that he's up to something big. He basically is thinking of redefining the Russian nation in the middle of this new wartime atmosphere. Prigozhin even made a public statement where he actually warned that Russia could face a revolution similar to that of 1917. He's basically referring to the Russian Revolution of 1917, where the Imperial Russian government was overthrown to bring the Bolsheviks to power. Basically, communists took control of the Russian Empire and the rise of Soviet Russia under Vladimir Lenin. From this sentence, it can be understood that Prigozhin is trying to portray himself as the defender and the voice of the masses, especially the poor. Now, this is usually a classic move by anyone who's trying to make his political debut. And Prigozhin had repeatedly stated in his public statements that the Russian Defense Ministry have been interfering in his operations and undermining his victories. He keeps accusing the Russian Defense Ministry, which may seem somewhat strange because any mercenary group or private military company relies on the logistics and intelligence provided by the Defense Ministry to carry out their operations. Therefore, criticizing the Russian Defense Ministry in this manner is also unjustified because the Western countries will use it in their favor to build narratives. And this is the reason why the Russian political elite began perceiving him and his group as a threat, and the same sentiment started being conveyed to Putin. Prigozhin basically started challenging the Russian Defense Ministry, the Russian state itself, and the president personally. As a former spy, Putin has a sharp sense of detecting danger and is quick to perceive threats. And when it comes to matters concerning his position or chair, he will certainly not spare anyone. So on Saturday, June 24th, when chief of the Wagner group, Yevgeny Pirgozhin, gave order to his private military forces to march towards the capital Moscow and seek revenge against President Putin, at that very moment, President Putin's suspicion turned into reality. Prigozhin became a threat to him. On Tuesday, June 27th, Russian President Vladimir Putin said publicly that the Wagner group is fully funded by Kremlin and has received 86 billion rubles in public money over the past year. From this, it can be understood that President Putin has no hesitation in stating that his government provided funds to this private military company to participate in the conflict in Ukraine. The reason Putin mentioned this because the owner of the Wagner group, Prigozhin, should not mislead the Russian public and present himself as a hero. President Putin did not want the world to perceive that the entire war was fought by the Wagner group alone. That is the reason President Putin publicly disclosed all the expenses incurred. As I mentioned earlier, a private military company or mercenary group is primarily motivated by financial interests. However, in this situation, as I explained, the owner of the Wagner group, Prigozhin, seeks to leverage the environment created by this conflict to further his own political ambitions. That is why on June 24th, as soon as the Wagner group rebelled and they moved towards Moscow, Russian President Putin immediately declared them traitors, and he also announced that strict action would be taken against all those combatants who had taken up arms against the Russian state. He also said they would face severe consequences that they couldn't even imagine. Russian government conducted raids on Wagner properties in southern Russia and confiscated everything from gold and cash. Wagner's main camp is in southern Russia at Molkino near Krasnodar. Upon hearing this news, the Wagner group was scared. They were taken aback for a moment, especially Wagner group's owner Pirgozhin. Then on June 27th, it was reported that Pirgozhin had left for Belarus, and this was confirmed by Belarusian President Lukashenko. He admitted that Pirgozhin arrived in Belarus on June 27th. Wagner chief Pirgozhin and Belarusian President Lukashenko reached a deal, following which Pirgozhin immediately gave orders to his private military to seize the mutiny and put an end to the rebellion. It is also said that Belarusian president offered Pirgozhin a proposal under which he would provide a base for some Wagner group's fighters to stay in Belarus. Belarusian President Lukashenko was so confident about this deal that when journalists asked him if there would be any trouble for his country in providing shelter to these mercenaries and whether these individuals would pose a threat to Belarus, Lukashenko said he was not concerned about having Wagner fighters in Belarus. And further he said they would be in the country on certain conditions. The main condition is that if we need to activate them for the defense of our country, then that will be done instantly in any direction. These are the words of President Lukashenko. He praised Wagner's experience. As you may be aware, Belarusian President Lukashenko shares a good rapport with Russian President Putin. Lukashenko tends to follow Putin's lead in most matters. Sometimes I get the feeling that the deal between Belarus and the Wagner group also had Putin's involvement, although Putin has not acknowledged it publicly, but it looks pretty evident. On June 27th, Pirgozhin was in Belarus. Lukashenko and Wagner's chief had a deal. Then immediately Russian government drops criminal charges against Pirgozhin and his members. The Russian government closed all criminal investigation against the Wagner group and the short-lived mutiny against the Russian state. They even returned more than $100 million in cash and gold bars that was seized during the raid. And now the news is coming that Pirgozhin has returned to Russia once again, and this has been confirmed by Belarusian President Lukashenko. Now I don't know what will happen to Pirgozhin. I am not aware if he was lured back to Russia or if President Putin has actually forgiven him. But one thing that you need to understand is that the Wagner group had been founded by Russia's GRU military intelligence service, and it is Russia's best fighting force. The June 24th mutiny has shown that Russian society has to be more united than ever. So keeping that in mind, I personally believe that the Wagner group will not be disbanded. It is because of them Russia took control of Bakhmut. So Wagner group will not be disbanded, but their chief Pirgozhin will be replaced. And if you remember, Pirgozhin has repeatedly accused the top brass of corruption and incompetence. That will also be taken care of. And if you have read the news, during the SCO meeting on July 4th, Putin acknowledged to the Asian leaders that Russia experienced a temporary armed mutiny last month, which disrupted its stability and unity. However, he reassured them that the Russian people are now more consolidated and united than ever before. If we observe this statement, one must acknowledge that leaders like Putin do not hesitate to admit when there has been a challenge or issue within their country. This is a highly commendable trait. Not every leader of a major country would admit such shortcomings in their own nation. Therefore, it is noteworthy that Putin acknowledges any small flaws that occurred within his own country, while also providing reassurances of resolving them. This means that Putin will investigate and scrutinize everything, and wherever there is a deficiency or a leak in his government, they will be immediately replaced or removed. One thing we must acknowledge about Putin is that he values unity. Unity is a crucial factor that either builds or breaks a country. I hope you found this video informative. Thank you for watching it.